Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The Movie Podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson! Welcome to the Movie Wire.
It gets so hard to keep track and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode or the podcast. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening. Download Newsly today.
You need people like me.
The Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. This week we have a fantastic lineup. We will be reviewing 4 new feature films that includes the highly anticipated Disney Plus exclusive Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, the theatrical release of Men, and finally, now available to rent or buy, is Monstrous. Ready to hear my verdict? Let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the Rescue Rangers are back.
This is Chip.
You know that was just a TV show, right?
This is Dale.
Hey, it's no secret I had the CGI surgery done. It's done wonders rejuvenating my career.
And this is The Comeback.
We're gonna be heroes! Woo!
The world didn't know it needed.
The fans are hungry for it.
I was always more of an Alvin and the Chipmunks person.
Yeah, monster. Disney's Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Rated PG, streaming May 20th. Only on
33
Disney+.
years in the making, and Disney Plus has a new original film. Now, me and Disney Plus haven't had the best of terms when it comes to their original content lately, but now comes Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers. Now, it's one thing to review a family film by myself as an adult, so we brought back a returning guest to the show, and that is my daughter, Brooklyn. Brooklyn, say hello.
Hello, people.
We've come to an agreement that if you're going to review a movie on the show, we're not going to talk about it until the show. I am curious to see what your thought is on this. So I'm going to go first, but what do you think I'm going to say?
Out of 4 stars, I think he would say 4 or 3.5.
You think I'm going to go that high with it?
Yes.
Well, we'll just have to find out. Let's get to work. The Disney afternoon is no secrets to kids that grew up in the late 80s and early 90s. It's also no secret that we grown-ups have missed it oh so much. We've had some good Disney fillers that have recently popped up in the recent years, from a remastered Disney afternoon, Nintendo game, comic books, and a rebooted DuckTales show. The biggest reaction from my observations on Twitter is why we couldn't get a DuckTales or Tailspin movie. And that's actually pretty simple. This would be the 3rd movie based on the Disney afternoon characters, which included DuckTales Treasure of the Lost Lamp, a Goofy movie, and now Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. DuckTales has commonly been assumed that it was the most popular. Well, it was one of the first Disney afternoon lineups alongside Gummy Bears. DuckTales ranked in a whopping 25 million viewers a day, according to the 1989 New York Times article by Bill Carter. But Rescue Rangers performed better, and it still remains one of the highest viewer counts at that time. Now, 33 years later, here comes a love letter to nostalgia where we find Chip 'n Dale in current times, way after the show has ended. Chip and Dale live very different lives, with Chip always being the logical-headed character living as an insurance salesman, and Dale's still trying to milk the nostalgic fans and can't let the past be the past. But Chip and Dale must team up once again to help solve the case of a mysterious disappearances of famous cartoon characters, including one of their own cast members. The film stars Andy Samberg as Dale and John Mulaney as Chip. And alongside them is an all-star voice cast, including J.K. Simmons, Dennis Haysbert, Will Arnett, and Eric Bana as the voice of Monterey Jack. I have to admit, I was hyped about this movie. I was the guy that brought out my inner child. I went to the kitchen, got my snacks, got my juice box. Actually, it was a beer. I'm not 7 anymore. And I cracked it open. And I tuned in right at midnight to watch Chip and Dale's. And I will try to hold my childhood giddiness during this review. For those that haven't seen it yet, I will keep it spoiler free. But let's get into it here. Let me just first say, for those of you wondering, that you can sleep safe at night knowing that this film wasn't awful. This film was quite clever, and I was the first person to voice my concern after seeing the trailer. As I stated in a previous episode, the trailer didn't feel like an episode of Rescue Rangers. I wanted something that after watching the movie, I knew I couldn't get. And looking at the tagline to the movie, it stands true. The tagline says it's not a reboot, it's a comeback. The movie doesn't go the route of a reboot that a lot of us complain about. I have to be honest, I wouldn't have minded a reboot of this live-action movie. I would have been okay with an full animated version of this. I would have been okay with a reintroduction to the origin. But the film is very clever in how it utilizes the reboot nostalgic factor. This isn't a normal Disney Plus original that we've seen in the last year. This film realizes what it is, and it pokes fun at itself, but in a positive way and in a hilarious way. The film's main appeal is that it's set in a Roger Rabbit type world where people and cartoons coexist. Now, Roger Rabbit was, let me just be clear on this, Roger Rabbit was a much better movie, hands down. But Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers is not without its own charm. The film is filled with so many pop culture references and cameos that if you blink for just the slightest second, you might miss it. I recently had a discussion about the film with one of my peers, where he was shocked and he didn't understand that a lot of people online are saying that this is this generation's Roger Rabbit. And what ruined it for him was a number of characters in this film. Now, me personally, I don't have a problem with that reference to Roger Rabbit, and this is why. When it comes to originality, this film takes a lot of risk, and to me, it's slightly a little better on the originality factor of it. Let's look back at Roger Rabbit and how many films were like this back in 1988, and how many references Roger Rabbit actually had. I can almost bet it had just as many, if not more, with the character load. There was nothing like it at the time Roger Rabbit came out. And it also introduces characters in both films that kids might not be familiar with when they viewed the original Roger Rabbit and now Rescue Rangers. So when I was a kid, I wasn't familiar with some of the characters in Roger Rabbit, and viewing it with my daughter, she probably wasn't familiar with some of the characters in this film. The main thing this film does with trying to stay apart from Roger Rabbit is that it uses cultural references more to its advantage, including making every character unique when it comes to the animation style, to give something to include to everyone in its audience. Now, it does poke fun at the Roger Rabbit reference. You do see Roger Rabbit dancing at a party early in the film. So I don't disagree that this is this generation's Roger Rabbit. I'm not saying that it's a comparable film to Roger Rabbit, but I think given the message, the references, it's pretty comparable. It introduces a new generation to a lot more animation, and it introduces this generation to kind of a dying show that they weren't familiar with before. The main win for this film isn't just the cameos that make us giddy, it's the ooh and ahs of the characters we do see. The film respects the material and the history of the Rescue Rangers show. This is what separates the film from a lot of the other sequels, reboots, and requels. The film even includes a cameo voice from the original creator of the show, Tad Stones, who is on the phone with Chip and Dale in the beginning to tell them they have their own show. The film faces a challenge of balance. On one hand, to satisfy the original fans of the show, and to entertain and to make fans of the new generation that might not be familiar with the original show, make them into fans. And will it please the original fan base is the big question. Yes, There's enough here to give a very satisfactory feeling. Will it please this generation? I think the film falls a little short when it comes to this. There is a piece of childhood innocence missing in the film and a sense of adventure that the episodes brought. It didn't spike childhood curiosity as the original show did. It does try to please the fans more than appeal to the newer generation. How much eye candy there is to look at, and the spot-on pacing of this film will succeed in entertaining everybody from children to adults. This film is absolutely well-balanced and well-paced. Now, there are some adult themes that Disney really went out a limb that turned out to be hilarious, but a little too risky for a Disney taste. We go from Monterey Jack with his cheese addiction that insinuates a drug addict to one of the riskier moves they made, which is a middle-aged, washed-up Peter Pan. And Peter Pan states in the movie he was fired by a studio as he got older and became jaded. Now, the character of the 1953 Peter Pan was originally played by Bobby Driscoll, in which, if the rumors that circulated for years are true, that he was fired from the studio because of his looks and his normal awkward move into puberty. More specifically, that Driscoll supposedly had extensive acne. This moved the actor into a downward trend of drug and alcohol abuse, which led to his death at the early, unfortunate age of 31 and ended up him buried in an unmarked grave. And it's being reported that this version in Rescue Rangers of Peter Pan is based on Driscoll after the fact, where he starts his downward trend. If that's true, to me, that's a little in bad taste. This kind of move may overshadow the film and even haunt it as it gets older, but I will have to give Disney credit when credit is due. Since I have bashed them on their original content lately on the show, this wasn't a quick cash grab like their other original movies. There was a strategy and thought put into this film, mainly due to the writing. The film was written by Dan Greger and Doug Mand. Both previous credits are from the 2020 version with Robert Downey Jr., Dr. Dolittle, and the TV show How I Met Your Mother, and have been rumored to be on board to help write the remake of the 1993 film Rookie of the Year. I think with Dolittle, these two were out of their element given most of their work has been on comedy sitcoms. Here in this film, you can tell they feel right at home. The movie is funny and it succeeds in most of its jokes. This is also due to the part of director Akiva Schaffer, who is most noted for his writing and directing on Saturday Night Live. This trio makes an absolutely fantastic team. It made me wonder if they could make this kind of family film with the risk the studio and the filmmakers took. I can only imagine what they could do when the Disney boxing gloves are taken off. I hope to see more of these three in a film in the future. Now, the film isn't perfect, and some of the cameos took away from the story. The Seth Rogen character Bob the Viking seems a little out of place in this film. His character does have a funny moment towards the end of the third act, but it almost seems that his character was thrown into the film just to land that one individual joke. His character doesn't really add anything to the story, and the villains, which are clever attempts, but they're a little weak than what I wanted. Again, I felt they went for more of the laugh factor than the characters than the true threat. And as a fan of the show, I would have loved to see more of the original characters on the show in the movie, or have at least some more screen time. The show had some truly great villains in it, and it would have been a great opportunity to give Gadget a bigger piece of the movie. Given that Disney has released a spin-off book series called The Mouse Watch by J.J. Gilbert, based on Gadget after the Rescue Rangers, I thought that was a missed opportunity. All that aside, the movie is a great trip back to memory lane and will entertain the entire family. This film does have something for everyone, with a basic but a fantastic message for your kids. The film, for all the challenges it had to face, attempting to make something that is 33 years old and make it still relevant, and the internet trolls to go up against, this film is a brilliant piece of family entertainment that's funny and original. When it comes to comebacks, this film does not get any better than this. I'm giving it 3 stars.
I thought it was really great, but it could have been a little better. I mean, honestly, it could be at least Dale could have been a little not he could have still looked at least a little cartoonish, not more realistic.
So like computer generated, you mean?
Yeah, I feel like he could have at least been a little like Dale and the rest of the cartoons. I mean, it was a great movie after all, but I think if you like realistic movies and kind of cartoon movies more, like if you like realistic movies, you won't really like this as much, but also you will. But if you like cartoons, you will kind of like this, but also really not like this at the same time. But I think it was a great movie.
So you liked it?
Yeah, I mean, you'll not like what I rate it, of course.
Okay. Before we get into your rating, did you find the movie entertaining?
I guess so.
Did you find it funny?
Oh, towards the end.
Okay. Now, you're not like most kids.
Mm-mm.
Like I'd even say why you're not like most kids. You just agree. That's not how this works. I introduced you to Rescue Rangers when you were younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, do you like the show?
Yeah, I love it. It's like 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, the show is great. After watching the show, how do you think the movie compared to the show?
Way different.
In a good way or a bad way?
Bad way.
Okay. Okay, now I'm curious to see what your review is. So what's your review? Or, I mean, what's your rating?
2 out of 4.
Now, give me a positive and a negative. Just if you had to sum it up in a positive and negative on the film, what would it be?
Okay, so first, the negative part is it's nothing really like the show.
Mm-hmm.
Chip literally has a dog. A human-sized dog in his house. A miniature chipmunk thing.
You're so articulate.
Yeah, a chipmunk literally has a human-sized dog.
Okay. Yeah. I mean...
But wait.
Okay.
No animal would ever have a real human-sized dog in the history of the world.
I think you're taking this movie a little too seriously. Have you talked to any chipmunks lately? Because the movie is about talking chipmunks that are rangers.
But wait. You take movies way too seriously, so why can't I? Huh?
Because it's a cartoon.
Well, it's not really a cartoon.
You just critique the movie because an animated chipmunk has a real dog. It's a talking chipmunk. That's what you have an issue with?
But also, it's nothing like the show.
Yeah. It is a little different. And you know what? If you're a fan of the Rescue Rangers, I mean, it's I don't know. It might be a 50-50. Like I said in my review, I would have been fine with kind of the original team just rebooting. I would have been fine with that too. But I think for what it was, I thought they could have gone a different route and based on like Home Sweet Home Alone, the Cheaper by the Dozen, all the stuff that's come to Disney. And I hate to compare it to that because this is a much better movie.
It could have had the main villain from the show.
Yep. And that's...
I mean, I was very annoyed that I was like,
You're talking
why?
Batcat?
Yeah, Batcat is like,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said in my review, I wish they would have utilized some of those villains because you do see two of the villains I know for sure I saw when they were shooting the original cartoon. So they do a cameo.
But the main villain's not in there. That's the problem, not the main villain.
Yeah. So I will agree with you. I mean, I wish I would have seen a little bit more of the originals, but you know what? For what it was, I thought it was clever. I thought it was unique. It's something that they kind of took a lot of risk on, and I think it paid off in the long run. So I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm giving it 3 stars.
2 stars.
Right. Well, if we're doing an average, that's 2.5 stars. Brooklyn, I want to thank you again for coming on the show, and you've been a great guest. And as always, you are a great person to hang out with at the movies. I appreciate it. That's all you have to say?
Yep.
Can't you just say, Dad, I love spending time with you?
Yeah.
You're killing me. All right. Brooklyn, it's time for bed with that said.
Wow.
Go brush your teeth.
Have you ever had a bad day at work?
Well, the Fuck My Work Life podcast is perfect for you.
Hosts Jay and Kay share listeners' entertaining stories from the workplace, which may have you thinking you don't have it so bad after all.
Find Fuck My Work Life on your favorite podcast platform.
Hello.
Hi.
Mrs. Marlowe, yes?
Harper, yes.
Do, come in.
The words I have to say.
It's a beautiful house.
But
Would it just be you staying, or
Excuse me?
Mrs. Marlowe?
No.
until you give your love, there's nothing more that we can do.
Apple from the garden?
Yeah, it was delicious.
No. Mustn't do that. Forbidden fruit.
Oh, God, sorry,
I'm joking.
Oh.
You're tormented.
It feels more like...
Haunted.
Yeah. Something happened. My husband went upstairs to our balcony and let himself go.
You must wonder why you drove him to it.
I didn't drive him to it.
I thought it'd be true. But if you had given him the chance to apologize, he'd still be alive.
What? A man followed me out of the woods. He was stalking me.
What makes you say that?
I saw him twice.
Twice. I don't know if he saw you once.
Want to play a game? You hide, I'll seek.
You must feel an awful sense of guilt.
Stay away from me. What are you doing now? What are you?
From the writer and director that brought you the great Ex Machina and Annihilation, Alex Garland brings you this new film entitled Men, about a young woman Harper played by Jessie Buckley, who played in Fargo, Doolittle, The Great Judy, and the TV miniseries Chernobyl. Harper goes on a vacation to the English countryside after a sudden death of her husband, only to find her vacation turns out to become one of her greatest nightmares. Now, as the market is getting really thin when it comes to traditional horror films due to box office numbers getting thinner and thinner, we're starting to get more of these symbolic, elevated horror films, which isn't a bad thing, but there is a danger following this path. As we look at the progression of the slasher genre over time that became very repetitive and a very overdone formula, and now we fast forward to now where we rarely see them with the exception of the Halloween films that keep chugging along. Eventually, the tired formula evolved from slasher to gore fest. A good example of this is the Saw franchise. Will this new genre of horror films follow in the evolution of slasher films, overdone, repetitive, or will they just try and outdo one another where they just become ridiculous? This film is an example of this where it doesn't go in the same direction of dumb horror, it tries to outdo its predecessors, to the point where it tries too hard to be too smart for its own good. This is where the danger for progression of these films may head. It's trying to be more symbolic in their messaging for their own good, to the point where it may have the audience members scratching their heads towards the end of the film. The characters of the film are actually quite well written and progress the story with a natural feel, especially with the property owner Jeffrey, played by Rory Kinnear. His character has a natural development in the film until the climax. He helps move the story's mystery along by his goofy human nature in a very mysterious way. Harper, who thanks to Jessie Buckley, we are invested into her character, and her performance makes us feel we are on a journey together. These two performances right off the bat makes the audience feel we are in for a wild ride. There is also a character, Samuel, played by Zach Rothrock-Oxley, who will send shivers down your spine when he is on screen. The first half of the film, the pace acts as a slow burn. and keeps us engaged, and with the characters of the town adding something for the audience that can chew on while the story is slowly moving along. Where the film falls apart is when it's time to sum up the messaging of the film, which happens way too fast. This is a film with an important message to land, and I feel it would have been more appropriate to take its time to help spoon-feed the audience a little more information on what it was trying to accomplish. In a lot of these movies, I walk out of the theater and I try to dissect what I just saw, or give my interpretation what the filmmakers were trying to do. Walking out of this film, I really didn't have the desire to, nor did I care. The film tries too hard to shock the audience with an ending like the 2017 film Mother or 2018 Hereditary, but would have been better to stand on its own with making the message the dominant factor. Not just what the hell shock factor or the messaging of what the hell I just saw. The messaging is lost in this and dominated by the end of the film, and it's just lost in translation. The film does have some truly tense moments, especially by the end of the third act, that keeps us and the audience on the edge of their seats. The film has a lot of moments that shine in it due to the actors and the actresses and the setting of the open, peaceful countryside that helps build the tension and the feeling of nowhere to run. The film could have been a memorable one if the filmmakers were clear on what they were going for, and by the climax, took its time to let the audience think about everything leading it up to it, or at least give the audience something to want to think about that the movie after they left. It's a shame when you make a movie with some great characters and performances, great pacing, and a great atmosphere, but the climax derails all the work that was put into it. It's like when you study for a test the entire night, and just to make sure you nail it, only to sleep through your alarm and miss the complete test. This film is a great lead up, but this is one of those rare films that the climax just kind of ruins it. And it has some great technical aspects to it, but it is, again, too smart for its own good. And for that reason, I'm going to give it 2.5 stars.
You ready, Freddie?
Hello there, young lady.
Good afternoon. What is this place? It's your new home. Isn't it wonderful?
Hello?
I miss you. I miss my son.
Well, you better get used to it because you'll never see either one of us ever again. Mother, how could you have got my number?
He just wants to talk to you. Why don't I come and stay with you for a while?
I don't need any help. Everything is perfect.
Cody. Mom, there's a monster outside my window.
You and I are completely safe. Like two bugs snug in a rug.
I want to go home.
Hi, doctor. I'm wondering if maybe I should go back on medication. St. Mary's Church. I think I have a demon in my house.
Monstrous, starring Chritina Ricci. I was joking during the first half of this film that this could have been a darker version or a reboot of the 1995 version of Casper. The reason I say this is Ricci's performance is almost that identical of the character she played in the 1995 film. This film had me confused. I was actually taking notes during the first half of the movie, and I underlined a comment about an hour into it roughly that just said this: lazy filmmaking. The film's focus on Laura, played by Ricci, a traumatized woman fleeing her abusive ex-husband with her 7-year-old son. In their new remote home, they find they have a more terrifying monster to deal with. Now, the last straw in this film, when I wrote lazy filmmaking, was the noticeable tone of this film. The film always used bright lighting during all the scenes, regardless of what's going on in the film. It could be a paranormal activity. It could be a happy moment. It could be a conversation. It could be a monster grabbing you by the neck. It doesn't matter. The lighting and the tone stays the same. and it doesn't affect the emotion and doesn't pull the audience in. This irritated me more than it probably should have. But that wasn't the only thing that led to my frustration. The movie was directed by Chris Sivertson, whose main focus is a lot of straight-to-streaming movies that are average at best. You can tell from the amount of vision he put into this film. For example, when we finally see the paranormal entity, it's cheesy, it's underproduced, it's B-movie standards at best. But what Sivertson does well is the use of shadows in the film. He made me wonder, why not just use practical effects if you can't make the main protagonist be frightening? This film would have done much better with an already in place shadows, practical effects, and the use of an actually good score. Sivertson's intentions are not clear, and sitting through the film is frustrating for the first half, especially since it sets up something great, and it's a good setting on the countryside and then set in the 50s, 60s, and the movie that asks the question to the audience. When it comes to Ricci's character, do you leave the house with a monster in it? Only to go to another house with somebody that acts like a monster. This is what writer Carol Kress asks, and the concept is interesting. One, if executed correctly. I can picture many feeling the same frustration and some maybe giving up on the film about halfway through. This film is meant to be judged as a whole, even though there are some issues with the protagonist, the technical issues in the film. But the final act becomes clear what the film is trying to do, and it rewards its audience by sitting through all the crap that it actually puts into this film. It's one of the best parts of the film. When I was finishing the film, I almost called it brilliant for working me up with so much frustration to the tone of the film to only recover from it with the change of events in the film that I won't give away because it's a spoiler-free review. But given a lot of the elementary work in the film, I can't say for sure if it was the writer's intent or was a lack of vision of what the film could have been. Looking at the film holistically, the film suffers from a clear vision from the director and is very sloppy. The film, by the climax, does have a satisfying look and into a transition that wasn't expected, but looking at the film as a whole, it could have been something if the director had a vision of something. That concludes this week's edition of the Movie Wire. Next week, I will be back with a ton of new reviews, including the highly anticipated Top Gun Maverick, Bob's Burgers the movie, and some movies you might want to check out on streaming. Until then, make sure you follow me and leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at MovieWire Show. Until next week, support your local movie theaters, and we will see you at the movies.
A verdict has been made on this episode of the Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at MovieWire Show or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.